Hello class, welcome to today's lesson. We're going to be looking at lesson 27 slash 28. We're grouping those two together and we're looking at how to do percent problems. In a moment we'll take a look at the question, but first I'll zoom into each half for those of you who guys are copying at home. This first half. And here is the second half. All right, so let's jump right in. The question is, how do I find the part, whole, or percent when I'm given the other two? So there are going to be times where we have a problem that gives us in the question the part and the whole, and we'll have to find the percent. That's what we're looking for. Or there will be times where we have the whole and the percent, and we'll be looking for the part. Or there will be times where we have the part and the percent, and we'll be looking for the whole. So, hope that wasn't, that's not too crazy with all those different, all the different things on there. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at how can we take two of these to find the third. Essentially, the easiest way to do that, and the way we're going to be looking at here on our notes, is to just use equivalent fractions to find whatever the missing value is. And we'll be jumping right in, and I'll be explaining how to do that for each example. As you can see here, there are three examples, examples 1, example 2, and example 3, and each of those represents a different one of these problems up here, whether we might be looking for the part, we might be looking for the whole, or we might be looking for the percent. Okay, and we're going to look at how to find each of those things. All right, so let's take first a look at example number 1. It says, what is 40% of 300? Now the first thing I always want us to do is identify what we're working with. Here, the 40%, pretty obviously, is the percent, right? So if that's the percent, we'll come back up here in our question at the top and check that off. So we have the percent, boom. Next, it says 40% of 300. So in this scenario, 300 is our whole, because that is the whole thing we're checking out. So whole, we have that. So what we're looking for is the part. Okay, that's the question. So down here in the task part, we are using equivalent fractions to find the missing value. So we start our 40%, we write it as a fraction, which we have done here, 40 over 100, because remember, 40%, anything that is a percent is whatever that anything is over 100. So start there, 40% equals what part, because remember, I said a couple lessons back that it is a part to whole ratio. So the whole will always be down here on the bottom, down here on the bottom, and the part will always be on top. So if we go back up here and we know that we have our percent, which we've written, 40 over 100, and we have our whole, the equivalent fraction with the equal sign then a fraction, the 300, since it's the whole, has to be on the bottom, and the question mark, which we're looking for, is the part, which is on top. So basically, once we've gotten to that point, it's not too hard to discern what we do next. We think to ourselves, okay, I'm looking at 40 over 100 equals what over 300? So we think, okay, 100 times what equals 300? Well, pretty easily, we see 100 times 3 equals 300. And I'm actually just now realizing that that is a division sign, and I am very, very sorry. That is supposed to be a multiplication sign. Silly Mr. Fields. Actually, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Sorry about that. Man, how embarrassing. So let's get rid of that division sign because this should be multiply. Anyway, so we have 100 times 3 equals 300. And if we have 3 here on the bottom, we have to have it on the top. So we do the 40 times 3, and 40 times 3 is 120. Okay, so what we're looking at here is that 40% of 300 equals 120. Same thing down here. 40%, which is 40 over 100, equivalent fraction with 300 on the bottom, multiply it by 3 to get 300, multiply 40 by 3 so it matches, and we have 120. All right, now that is the same concept we'll be using. However, we just have to place our equivalent fractions differently. So let's take a look at example number 2. Example number 2 says 40% of what is 160. So let's identify what we're working with here. The 40%, yet again, obviously, is the percent because it says percent. So we have that. And the other number that we see here is 160. So what we have left with is the part or the whole, because we know 40% is a percent. And when it says of what number is 160, this 160 here is the part. So we have that one. So what we're looking for here is the whole. That is the question, so you can answer. So let's come back down here to the question. All right, 40% of what number is 160? So what we do here is, yet again, 40%, we know how to write that, is just 40 over 100. 40% means per 100. But now when we create our equivalent fraction, we have our equal sign. And then since the 160 is the part, we put it on top of the fraction bar because the whole is what we're looking for down here. Okay, it's on top because it's the part. Now, pretty simply, we think to ourselves, okay, 40 times what equals 160? So if we don't know, we can divide 160 by 40, but hopefully we kind of know 40 times 4 equals 160. So 4 is what we're working with. If we multiply by 40 on top, multiply by 4 on top, then we got to multiply by 4 on the bottom. So we take this 100 times 4, and we get 400. So the whole that we're looking for is 400 right there. Okay? So to recap, 40% of what whole is 160? It's 140. 40 over 100 equals 160 over what? 40 times 4 is 160, so if we're using 4, we've got to use 4 on the bottom. 100 times 4 is 400. 400 is our whole. All right, now come up here. We'll get rid of this because we're going to need to do that again in just a moment. All right, so, hey, get out of there, you. All right, and then get rid of this check mark here. Okay, so example number 3. 40 out of 500 is what percent? So now we've got this 40 out of 500 is what percent? So 40 is the part, 500 is the whole, and obviously what we're looking for here is the percent. I mean, it tells it to us. It says, is what percent? So back up here, when we're marking off what we've got, we have the part, we have the whole, and we're looking for the percent. And we do it the exact same way. We set up equivalent fractions. So, since we have the part, which is here, part goes on top, so 40 is on the top. And since we have the whole, which is here, we know that the ratio is part to whole ratio. We have 40 over 500 because it's the part to whole ratio. And we set that equal to a fraction over 100 because remember, percent means per 100. This fraction bar means per, and cent means 100. Okay, so we're looking for what goes on top of that. Pretty simply, the same way we've been doing the other ones, we think, okay, we can look down here along at the denominators. 500 is bigger than 100, so I probably should divide. Got to make it smaller, scale it down. So 500 divided by what equals 100? Pretty simply, 500 divided by 5 equals 100. So if we're dividing by 5 in the denominators, we got to divide by 5 on top in the numerators. 40 divided by 5 is 8. So when we see this, 8 over 100, we know that 8 over 100 is what percent, because we have to write it in, we have to write it in the form of a percent, because that's what it's asking. So our answer can't just be, it can't just be 8 over 100. It's got to be in form of a percent. So 8% is our answer, because 8 over 100 is 8%. Okay. Now I know that that is kind of a lot, but all you got to remember is we first identify what we have. Do we have the part, whole, or percent? What are we looking for? The part, whole, or percent. Create these equivalent fractions and just fill in the rest. And this will come with practice. I promise it'll get to a point where you're just cranking it out. Easy peasy. So your work is down here. 90 out of 200 is what percent? All right, I'll even give you a hint for those of you watching this video. 90 out of 200 is what percent? So you have your part, you have your whole, and what you're looking for is the percent. So good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.